Part 51. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 501. Chapter 501 No Pain, No Gain. The village chief wore a big straw hat, and his only free-moving arm was no longer free to wave his pipe and pot. At this moment, he was also carrying a bucket, stopping from time to time to shout to the villagers, "Everyone, please work harder, we can water all the melon fields today. Others are afraid of drought, but we are not." In Qingshui village, the drought was much worse than this one, but we survived it anyway. "Haha, I got it, Uncle Village Chief," a man wiped his sweat and smiled brightly. "What we water is not water, but gold seeds. The drier the weather, the sweeter the melons. We will definitely get rich again this year." Others also laughed, and a woman shouted, "If the money is divided again this year, my family will be able to marry a daughter-in-law." "My family is the same, haha, what we are watering is not water, but our daughter-in-law and fat grandson," another woman also said with a smile, and finally looked under the big tree on the ground with her feet raised. There was a straw mat placed there, and Aunt Wu was taking care of Hui Niang's twins. The twins had just learned to sit up, and were only wearing belly bands and shorts. They were as fat as rollers, and everyone fell in love with them. Especially for older women, they wish they could have two such fat babies in their family in the blink of an eye. Huaniang also wore a straw hat and watered the water with the villagers. A woman asked, "Sister Huaniang, Daong, and the others have been away for 2 months. Is there any news back?" Huaniang smiled and said, "Yes, I heard that I have won many battles and I think I will be back soon." "That's good. I'll raise a few more chickens this year. When the Marquis and others come back, I'll kill them and stew them in a big pot to add to the celebration banquet." After the woman finished speaking with a smile, she aroused the acquaintance. Several companions laughed. One of the young wives said, "Oh, it's rare for my sister-in-law to be generous. She almost broke my head because of an egg before, but now she has really changed her gender." The woman blushed earlier and said angrily, "Isn't life difficult in the past? 1 egg can be exchanged for a handful of salt, which is enough for the family to eat several meals. Now that life is good, of course we can be generous." Aunt Lee said, "Be more generous when doing things, don't worry about it, let's all take advantage of it, our life will be better, and our financial path will be wider." Aunt Lee is right, the women all nodded. Someone took advantage of the situation and asked, "I saw that my aunt took Fu Niur and left in a carriage in the morning. Is this going to Luoan again?" "Yes," Hui Niang answered this time, "Grn is about to take the scholar examination. Auntie is worried about it, so of course she has to go and have a look. But the village is carrying water to water the melons and seedlings again, and Auntie is not worried, so she decided to wait until today." Sister-in-law Hong Ying and I persuaded her to leave. "Oh, we didn't know about this," a woman yelled. "If I had known, I would have told my aunt to leave long ago. These menial jobs in the village are just trivial matters, but Grn's examination for talents is a big deal. Yes, Grn is so smart and can endure hardships this time, taking the scholar test will definitely be as easy as a sure thing, you can't go wrong. I heard that Grn is now famous in Zindu. Did the gentleman who writes left-hand calligraphy take him out to participate in some poetry meeting, and his handwriting was praised by a high official? Ask the village chief, he knows best. We are also raising children, but how come all the boys in Aunt Lee's family are so successful? When it's our family's turn, these naughty boys don't go to Fangjawa. I'm so thankful. That's the one in my house. I'm beaten 8 times a day and I'm not even relieved." While the women were working, they were chatting enthusiastically. Although everyone expressed disdain for his son, there was a bright smile on his face. "The children you give birth to, whether they are good or not, are all a matter of your heart." The village chief slapped his sore waist twice, put down the bucket, and looked at the large melon fields. He was also happy. This is already the third time of watering. The melon vines have not suffered any thirst and are growing very well. The melon leaves are green, and there are pot-sized melons hidden in the leaves. Half of the face is shyly exposed, which makes people drool when they see it. They want to smash one open immediately and eat it to their heart's content. It's always a reward for every effort. Melons are also planted in Dawaisha village, Dawangjuang, and Xiaoangjuang, and they are watered continuously throughout the spring and summer. But the villagers are lazy and compete with each other when working. Every time San Lijhan shouts and becomes hoarse before he can water a few acres of land. Now there are melons growing in their fields, but unfortunately they are much different in size and quality than those in Zincan. Some people say that Zincan is a geomantic treasure land, and the melons grown there are naturally better than those grown elsewhere. Actually, there is no feng shui treasure. A lazy man will starve to death if he sits in a cornucopia, but the geomantic treasures in the eyes of outsiders were dug out by the old and young with an pickaxe. Under the same scorching sun, the Li family's carriage finally arrived outside the small town of Lugoan. The 30 acres of land I bought a year ago are now planted with 20 acres of sorghum and millet, leaving 10 acres for vegetables. Wu Laoju's family are all hard-working people. This spring and summer, they wish they could live in the vegetable field and take care of it in an orderly manner. Looking from a distance now, the furrows in the ground are as straight as those plowed with a ruler. Frames of oil beans, as tall as a person, were blown by the summer wind, waving their palm-like leaves in an enthusiastic manner. The rows of eggplant seedlings, with the withered leaves below broken off, revealed the shiny purple-black eggplants. In the vegetable pools, green cabbage, spinach, coriander, rapeseed, and radish with red stems were planted. They looked like a red grid for calligraphy practice, especially regular. The little girl from the Wu family was as tanned as black coal. She came out of the house carrying a sickle and was about to go to the fields. When she saw the Li family's carriage parked on the side of the road, she hurried over to salute. Old Mrs. Li smiled and wiped her sweat beads and chatted for a while. When she heard that Wu Laoju had gone to the canteen to deliver food, she nodded. Ji Yan poked his head out of the car window, handed the little girl a box of snacks, and said, "This is the horseshoe cake. It was just baked in the shop. Take it back and eat it." The little girl from the Wu family was so happy that she took the box and bowed again. She blushed and said, "The princess is so kind. The girls in the neighborhood are all envious of me. The pearl-studded headband that the princess gave me last time, they said they could sell it for tens of pennies, but my mother was reluctant to let me wear it." Mrs. Li smiled and said, "Wear it if you want. Work hard. When you get married, I will give you a set of pearls to make up your face. I will make sure you are the most beautiful bride." The little girl was shy, her face turned redder, but her eyes were sparkling. The carriage quickly started moving again and went directly to the small door of the academy canteen. Li Lao-san heard the commotion and ran out to greet his mother and niece, smiling honestly. "Mom, it's so hot, why did you come here in the sun? Send me a message, and I'll pick you up when I go back. We'll set off in the middle of the night. It's best to arrive in the morning." Old Mrs. Li waved her hand. Mom has been in the sun for most of her life, so she is not so delicate. "But you are busy right now, right?" Li Lao-san helped his little niece step on the stool and got out of the car, and replied, "We are used to it every day, and we don't feel busy. But Wenjuan's small business has been extremely popular these days." Ji Yan wore a water-red gauze skirt today, and her hair was tied into 2 small buds. She couldn't wait to ask, "Has the third brother brought the passion fruit here and started selling passion fruit drink?" After saying that, without waiting for Sanbo's reply, she flew to the water seller's hut like a butterfly. "Sorry, my dears, I'm late again. Shame on you. I was pruned by my head today, so I really didn't have time to update it early, so I will post the third update today." End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 502. Chapter 502, My heart is cold and my heart is flying. Xiaoyu had just delivered ice cubes and milk tea ingredients. She was sweating profusely due to the heat. When she suddenly saw good news coming in, she quickly saluted. Then, she stepped forward and said happily, "Princess, our fruit drinks are sold out. The third young master sent so many purple fruits here the day before yesterday. I followed your message and dug out the pulp and mixed it with honey. Ice cubes together, it's simply delicious. More than 60 pots were sold yesterday. A pot is 30 cents, which is 20 taels of silver. There is also milk tea. After dinner, the young gentlemen are willing to take a cup back, saying that they can drink it while attending evening classes. It is much better than drinking tea to relieve sleepiness when you are full. Our lady settled the accounts the day before yesterday and sold them a month ago." Xiaoyu is a lively person who can't hold back her words, and she is eager to share the good news, so she becomes even more open-minded about her words. Ji Yin looked at the 2.5 young men busy behind her, interrupted her in time, and said, "Oh, I'll pay the bill later. Sister Xiaoyu, give me a glass of fruit drink first. I haven't tasted it yet." Woolen cloth. Hey, princess, wait a minute, I'll make you a drink." Xiaoyu hurriedly went to find the passion fruit, and called 2.5 boys to knock ice cubes. The families of 2.5 young men both live in this town, and are somewhat related to the steward of the college. I heard that the canteen sells new tea and I need help. The steward came here to ask for help. Li Laosan and Zhao Yuru made the decision for Wenjuan and kept her for a few days. It turned out that the two boys were very diligent, didn't talk much at all, and were very studious. They come to work every afternoon and go home after the evening classes at the college begin. But they always came over before lunch to help Dazu and others with chores, cleaning tables and chairs, washing dishes and chopsticks, and they were not lazy at all. Then he started selling fruit drinks and milk tea with Xiaoyu in the small thatched shed in the afternoon, and occasionally ran errands to deliver them to the school building. Whenever they had free time, they would read a Mongolian book and ask Xiaoyu or the students who came to buy fruit drinks for advice. To practice calligraphy, they would use tree branches to make a few strokes on the ground. Who wouldn't like such a diligent and motivated child? So, in addition to their wages, Li Laosan gave them an extra 10 cents a day as a subsidy, plus provided them with lunch and dinner. In a blink of an eye, the two boys have been coming to the cafeteria for 2 months. At this moment, the two men brought over the wooden barrel wrapped in old cotton. After removing the quilt, they found a small pottery basin on the lid of the barrel. When they opened the pot, a hole as big as the mouth of a bowl was revealed. A boy took an iron drill, reached into the hole, and pounded it hard a few times. Another boy opened the cover, quickly scraped out a bowl of crushed ice cubes, and handed it to Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu quickly took out a white porcelain mug, added a spoonful of passion fruit pulp, 2 spoons of honey, and left half a cup cold. Finally, she poured crushed ice into it, stirred it evenly, and inserted a thin bamboo tube. Ji Yin took it, took a sip, and tasted the taste carefully. Although it is still not as good as the drinks I drank in my previous life, it is better than the coolness and sweetness. In such a hot weather, one gulp makes me feel very comfortable from head to toe. Well, it tastes delicious, she praised with a smile, making Xiaoyu and the two boys smile brightly. Xiaoyu asked, "Princess, is this purple fruit called passion fruit? It does taste much better than wild berries and sour fruits." Ji Yin nodded. "This fruit drink can be called honey 100 fruit drink. When apples and pears come down, and the weather gets cold, you can also make fruit tea and stew rock sugar and snow pear soup. As long as you think carefully, it will taste delicious in spring, summer, autumn, and winter. If there are more, business will not be bad." Xiao Yu was excited when she heard this. Don't worry, princess, I will definitely work hard to figure it out. Soon, she quickly made a few more fruit drinks, and then followed the good news into the private room of the cafeteria on a tray. Mrs. Li was talking to her son and daughter-in-law when she saw her granddaughter holding a white porcelain cup and drinking as she walked. She said angrily, "This child has become much more sensible recently. She is serious about learning rules and needlework, but she can't change her gluttony. I'm really afraid. She has put on too much flesh and is delaying her growth." Zhao Yuru took her little niece in her arms, waving the fan in her hand to fan her. "Mom is just greedy, our Fu Niu is so good, there is no child more considerate and smart than this. Our family is not like this, we were so poor back then, what else could we lack but food and drink for our children? It's a good thing to be able to eat, and it's a blessing to be able to eat." Li Lao-san also smiled naively and echoed, "Fu Niu hasn't grown up yet." "Okay, you just get used to it." Mrs. Li couldn't laugh or cry when she heard this. "I have become a bad grandma. It's the same at home, your second brother, Mr. Wen, Jinro, and even the village chief, they all look bad every time they see me. I have to say, let me not be too strict with Fu Niu. The child studies every day, learns rules, learns needlework, and runs to Drjiang every now and then. I am afraid that she will be exhausted, but I am wronged. It's really not me who forced the child to be diligent," but she suddenly enlightened herself. "She is as busy as a little spinning top every day, and I feel bad for her, so I brought her to play with her for a few days to let her rest, and I can also relax for a while." Li Lao-san and Zhao Yuru were both surprised. Zhao Yuru held her little niece in her arms and looked at her for a long time. After confirming that she was still the original niece, she was quietly relieved. But she couldn't help but exhorted, "Fu Niu, studying is a good thing, but you are still young, so don't tire yourself out. Listen to my mother-in-law, just play when you have to, don't be in a hurry to learn skills. You are the only one in the family who is so precious. Even if something happens, your uncle and brothers are still there, so you can eat what you want and play what you want, you know." "I know, Auntie," Jiyan smiled, her big eyes bent like crescent moons, and handed over the fruit drink in her hand. "Auntie, drink it, it's very sweet." Zhao Yuru lowered her head and pretended to take a sip. In fact, her lips did not touch the bamboo tube at all. Then she smiled and bumped her forehead with her little niece. "It really tastes good. We Fu Niuers are so smart. Why did we read about Quanzhou from the book, this magical fruit? Scoop out the pulp and soak it in water, it tastes so good." Jiyan smiled and ran to bring the fruit drink to the third uncle. Li Lao-san opened his mouth to bite the bamboo pipe, but Zhao Yuru slapped him aside and said angrily, "You adults have dirty mouths, don't touch children's things." Li Lao-san scratched the back of his head, smiled and took a glass from the tray to his wife. Then he also took a glass and drank a gulp. He couldn't help but praise, "It's really cool." Old Mrs. Li also nodded, "It's such a hot summer. It's really cool to drink a cup of this. Did Ji find a lot of fruit? Get a few when we go back. Then we can make a few more cups and give them to the villagers. It's all about quenching your thirst. There's been a shortage of water in the fields recently, and everyone has been carrying water to water the melons. It's really hard." A lot," Li Lao-san said quickly. "Ji brought half a boat back and filled the cellar in the small courtyard. When mother goes back, she can take as much as she wants." Everyone chatted a few more words, and then the school bell rang. The students were sweating profusely in the dormitory, and almost immediately ran to the cafeteria. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 503. Chapter 503 Birds of a feather flock together, and people flock together. Not to mention that there are fruit drinks with ice in the cafeteria, in the hall, there is water sprinkled on the floor, and there are wooden buckets filled with ice cubes in the corner to cool down, which is much better than in the school dormitory. The gentle young gentlemen who used to wear long gowns and square scarves on their heads were all gone now. They scurried into the room like crazy rabbits and occupied the table near the ice bucket, and then breathed a sigh of relief. Then, someone shouted to the two boys, Niu Hung, Lin Er, bring me a pot of fruit drink quickly, and put more ice in it. We want it too. We must put more ice. It's too hot. I can't live without chewing a few mouthfuls of ice, the students at the next table also yelled. For a while, the hall was as noisy as a vegetable market. Xiaoyu and the two boys had already calculated the time and were ready before the students got out of school. At this moment, the three of them quickly added ice cubes to the white porcelain jugs, then brought them to the students' tables one after another, and took back the special water stamps one by one. There are two types of water stamps. One is with a face value of 30 cents, which is enough to buy a bottle of fruit drink with ice. One is worth 10 cents, which can buy a large cup of milk tea or a large cup of fruit drink. And one pot can pour almost 4 or 5 cups, which is more cost-effective no matter how you look at it. So students basically buy the whole pot, and just treat a few classmates they have made friends with in turn. Jian and Jiaxi rushed into the cafeteria with their cat brother in between the students. Without raising their heads or opening their eyes, they rushed straight into the private room. On weekdays, the family will put an extra ice bucket here and prepare fruit drinks in advance. As a result, as soon as they entered the door today, they found their grandma sitting there with a smile on their face, and their sister was also smiling, holding a bamboo tube and blowing bubbles. They immediately went crazy with joy. Mistress, sister. When did you come? Oh, sis, I miss you so much. Brother Cat was the first to rush into the old lady's arms, followed closely by Jia and Jiaxi. 3.5 young men surrounded old Mrs. Li in the middle and hugged her tightly. When people come to the academy to study, they don't have the convenience of food and accommodation at home, and they study hard, so they inevitably lose weight. As it turns out, the three of them have not made much progress in their serious studies. Instead, they are interested in playing football, practicing swordsmanship, and riding horses. They are all interested in everything. Unexpectedly, all these things consume a lot of energy, so I eat more and sleep well. Instead of losing weight, I actually gain a lot of weight. Especially after the family came over and opened a cafeteria, they were fed 3 meals a day, plus midnight snacks, as if they were accustomed to the wind. Now, Jia and Jiaxi has grown as tall as Li Lao-san. Even the cat brother has reached Li Lao-san's shoulders. He is completely different from the skinny and small appearance he had when he first returned to Li Lao-san's house. Mrs. Li couldn't laugh or cry as she was being harassed by her grandchildren. She raised her hand and knocked on each of them, and said angrily, "You are all young men, Grandma can't help you bullying like this, so hurry up and drive away. The stench of sweat on your body is smelling all over your nose." Jian, Jiaxi, and cat brother were beaten, but they also smiled and gathered in front of Grandma and were reluctant to leave. Just in time, Jiaran and brother Li came in slowly, and when they saw Grandma, they were also happy to come forward and salute. Old Mrs. Li said, "Let's go home and talk. Let's have dinner at home too. There are too many people here." "Yeah." The boys were all shouting happily. Brother Cat stepped forward and took his sister's hand, and asked secretly, "Fu Niuer, have you brought me something delicious?" "Bring it," Jiyan smiled and gestured. Brother Cat almost jumped up for joy, and opened his mouth to shout, "It's Baiu." Before he could shout out, Brother Li quickly covered the silly brother's mouth. Jia Huan's brother came back yesterday and said that the green jade melons in the village will not open until 7 or 8 days. Sister brought them here now, she must be subsidizing them privately. It was not sent to the dean, nor to the husband, nor even to the palace. If you shout out and are heard by others, and if you are jealous and labeled as disrespectful, the Lee family will be in some trouble. I have to say that the Lee family is having a better life now, and they have to act more cautiously. Jiaran glanced at brother Lee approvingly, then crouched down and carried his sister on his back, quietly following his grandma out of the cafeteria. Jiaran greeted his familiar classmates and shouted, "We're going home to have dinner with grandma. You go sit in the private room. There's an ice bucket." The classmates were waving their fans, and when they heard this, they all laughed and ran to the private room. One of them didn't forget to shout, "You guys come back early after dinner, we have to play football with the school next door." I know, I can't forget it," Jian waved his hand and ran away happily. Mrs. Lee and others all laughed when they heard this. Birds of a feather flock together, and people flock together. These two boys like to play, and those who are friends with them are all naughty ones. Fortunately, Luoan's academic style is liberal and does not force students to study hard. Otherwise, if they are so playful, they will be considered the black sheep in other academies. Lee's courtyard is not far from the academy, but everyone was still hot and sweating when they walked home. Wen Juan was startled when she suddenly saw so many people coming back, and then happily went to make arrangements. "Fetch water, get cloths, and go to the kitchen to prepare ingredients." He Yan and Shui Yu, and Dong Mei, who rarely came to walk around, quickly took the living counting. Wen Juan then sat next to her grandmother, fanned her and asked about trivial matters at home. The Cat brothers washed their faces randomly, changed their clothes, and then gathered around their sister to get some delicious food. The family's carriage was parked in the corner of the yard. Yashan had just unloaded the carriage and was leading the bay horse to graze outside the town. As soon as Jiyan heard the news, he opened the car door and asked his brothers to empty the basket. The jade melons and golden fruits in Broken Gold Beach's melon field are indeed not ripe yet. However, what was planted in the Jiyan space has matured twice, and it has been stored in half of the yard. I am waiting to take advantage of the melon fields outside to open in a few days, fish in troubled waters, sell them, and make a lot of money. This time, she only brought 4 jasper melons and a basket of golden fruits. If she wasn't worried about being too eye-catching, she would have liked to fill a car full of them. But Jian, Jiaxi, and Brother Cat couldn't help but cheer at the top of their lungs, picked up the basket and ran under the eaves. Jiaran and Brother Lee were talking to Grandma in a polite manner, but when they saw Jade Melon and Jinguoer, they stood up happily. Soon, the small square table was moved out. A sharp hatchet, washed clean, temporarily used as a watermelon knife. When the knife is cut, red juice will flow out. The clear melon fragrance makes everyone salivate after sniffing it. Within a moment, everyone gathered around the table and started eating happily. "Wow, it's so sweet. Why is it still cold? Did it freeze at home? I'm so greedy, I dreamed of eating melon last night." The boys were eating loudly and yelling vaguely, which made Mrs. Lee laugh. She pulled the cloth and wiped their chins from time to time. "Remember from now on to be nice to your sister. Last night, she put this melon in the well water to calm it down, and kept spraying water on the road, just so that you can get it and eat it immediately mouth. Even though your sister is young, she takes good care of you." The boys all laughed when they heard this. They took a piece of melon and put it to their sister's mouth, making sure that she bites off the sweetest part of the melon. Brother Cat was still patting his chest and promised his sister, "My father came over yesterday and gave me pocket money. Sister, I will take you to buy sticky cakes later." Before the good news could be said, a white shadow suddenly jumped out of the carriage. It was Sanjo. This little fox is a glutton for food and sleep. He fell asleep while wandering in the carriage on the road just now and refused to get off the carriage when he got there. I woke up completely at this moment. When I got off the car, I found that I had changed places. I was still a little confused for a while, and my small black bean-like eyes were full of doubts. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 504. Chapter 504 Donkey Dung Eggs in the Soup Pot. Jiyan quickly waved his hand to greet his stupid fox. Sanjo, come here, come here. The little fox immediately rushed over, almost knocking Jiyan so hard that he sat on the ground. The boys were curious, and after nibbling the melons in their hands, they came close to them, stroking the smooth fur of the little fox and asking various questions. My father said that Mr. Ho caught a little fox for his sister to play with. Is this it? Oh, there are really 3 tails, is this a vixen? The little fox woke up a little thirsty. Before he could mix a piece of melon to moisten his throat, the boy smeared melon juice all over his body. It was so disgusted that it quickly stuck out its tongue and licked it non-stop. The cat brother was surprised. Sister, don't you give it melons to eat at home? Look at how greedy it is, how pitiful it is. The little fox probably understood. He almost didn't take his tongue back when he stuck it out. It grinned angrily, trying to distinguish it from the cat brother. It was cleaning its hair, not being greedy. There are so many melons in space, and they all eat them by lying on the pile of melons and rolling around to eat them. It's a pity that everyone can't understand the fox's language, so when they see it is so ferocious, they become worried. Jiaran asked, have you seen Grandpa Zhang about this fox? Does it have any bad diseases? Will it bite people? What if it hurts Fu Niu? Jia and Jia 11 and the others also nodded along. Old Mrs. Li said, don't worry, the Marquis has checked with the who tames animals in the palace, and the fangs and claws of Santiago have been clipped. Moreover, Fu Niu has been raised well in the past 2 months, and Santiago has never been messy. Run, you are better than a puppy or a kitten. Everyone was reluctantly relieved. Soon, dinner will be ready. Li Laosan and Zhao Yuru were busy in the cafeteria, and Mrs. Li took her grandchildren to eat. The children got together and made noisy noises, their laughter carried by the wind to Sun's house next door. Sun Si Yuan and his wife were sitting under the eaves of the veranda enjoying the cool air, so they could not avoid hearing it. Mrs. Sun whispered, the old lady of the Li family next door brought the little princess over from Sujintan. Sun Si Yuan nodded and told, just be ordinary neighbors. It's a pity that the nanny doesn't know the rules and made trouble with the Li family. Otherwise, if such a good family takes care of my daughter a little, my life will be much smoother. When mentioning Nanan's nanny, Mrs. Sun also frowned and sighed. The account books from Zhuangzi were delivered, and I took a look at them. Sister-in-law Li is too ambitious and too strong. She didn't know where to find the source, so she bought seeds and actually planted half an acre of corn and half an acre of potatoes, which cost more than 200 taels of silver. She also said that there would be a good harvest in autumn, and if she sold it as seeds, the price would be 10 times that. Profits were made. But why doesn't she think about it? In the autumn, every family will have a good harvest of corn and potatoes, and the prices will inevitably drop. She is afraid that she will not be able to recover her capital. How can she make 10 times the profit? Sun Si Yuan was angry when he heard this. Nonsense. Send her to see Zhuangzi. Why aren't you honest? Mrs. Sun smiled bitterly and did not respond. She is an aunt who has to take care of her niece who lives next door to her. If she interferes more with her niece's property, outsiders may think she has some agenda. At the very least, Sun Qingjian's family will come and cause chaos. Sun Si Yuan obviously understood this. He patted his wife's hand and sighed, thank you for your hard work. You don't have to worry about these things. Keep the account books and Zhuangzi's land deeds. When my daughter grows up, I will give them to her together. What to do with this wet nurse depends on Nanan's own wishes. As long as Zhuangzi is not sold, The annual harvest will be lost. If that wet nurse is really ignorant, give her a 20-year mark so that she can remember it better. Okay, sir, don't worry. Mr's son smiled and said nothing more. The couple couldn't help but feel envious as they listened to the laughter and laughter next door. The old man is sensible, the brothers are harmonious, and the grandchildren are prosperous. I am afraid there are not many such a prosperous family in the whole world. When it got dark, Jiren took his brothers back to the academy for evening classes. The boys were reluctant to leave, their eyes eager to stick to the remaining jade melons, which made Mrs. Lee laugh so hard that she started chasing them away. Don't worry, these melons are not given as gifts, they are reserved for you to eat secretly. Go to class quickly, there will be some when you come back tomorrow night. Thank you, Grandma. The boys were relieved and ran away like a swarm of swarms. Halfway, I met Tao Hongying and Jia Huan, who were rushing back from a restaurant in the city. So they each shared a chicken drumstick. Jiren was so full that he couldn't eat the chicken legs, and he didn't want to live up to his aunt's love, so he took the chicken legs back to the school and gave them to the fattest one of his classmates, the gluttonous one. The other boys who were seated nearby, just like joining in the fun, surrounded the fat man and fought for it until each of them took a bite before giving up. For a while, the school was very happy. The other classmates just watched them laughing and laughed along with them. But the two people sitting in the back row were full of disdain, and there was a little bit of pride in their expressions. But everyone is used to it. These two are like donkey dung eggs in a soup pot, always rising to the surface of the soup from time to time to show their existence. Since you can't pick it out, you can only treat it as invisible. Even Jiren didn't take it seriously. After all, he was not a man of money, so he couldn't be liked by everyone. Li Laosan and Zhao Yuru returned to the small courtyard very late. Without the noise of the children, everyone gathered together, eating jade melons, shaking cattail fans, and chatting, feeling more at ease. It was very late, and everyone went to sleep. Early on the next morning, Li Laosan and Zhao Yuru went to the canteen before dawn. After breakfast was over and the students had their classes, Zhao Yuru came back and took the old and young people for a walk on the street, for fear that they would be bored at home. Jiyan is young and very novel. When Juan has to take care of the small courtyard, do housework, and make ice. She is also busy on weekdays. She hasn't been on the street for a long time, so she is a little tempted. Mrs. Lee and Tao Hongying doted on their children. Even if they had nothing to buy, they would just follow them around. Today, there are a few clouds in the sky, and it is not too sunny yet. It is a good time to go out and play. So the family took Grandma He and Shuiling and went out. The first thing you do when you go to the street is to buy sticky cakes at the end of the street. Jiyan ate while walking, and from time to time he ran to look at the small things on the roadside stalls. But she just looked at it, and there was nothing that caught her eye. After all, the workmanship was too rough. As a result, a hawker probably hadn't opened his shop for half a day. Seeing that they were well dressed, he kept pestering them and introducing them. Finally, he took out a pair of wooden plaques with excellent carvings and said, "These are the blessings of peace that were placed in the temple and consecrated. Do you have any candidates at home? Buy them back for the candidates to take with them. You will definitely go well in high school." Zhao Yuru was in the college and often saw this thing hanging on the waists of the students, so she laughed and said, "There are many people in the college who have them, but it doesn't look as good as this one." "Of course, madam, these two plagues are carved from sandalwood, and they have been worshipped in the temple for 49 days. The vendor was talking about it, but was suddenly interrupted by Sanjo in Jianyan's arms. Sanjo didn't know what was wrong. Maybe he didn't like the hawker, so he kept baring his teeth at him, and even wanted to jump over and bite him. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 505. Chapter 505 The Abnormal Hawker. Everyone was shocked. After all, the little fox had been very well behaved these past 2 days. He didn't bite things naughtily, let alone run around. It can even be said that he is lazy. He only eats and sleeps. When he catches good news, he can lie down next to him and not move for an hour or two. The boys came back last night and teased it by pulling its tail, but it didn't say it was going to bite anyone. What's going on now? Ji-yin quickly patted the little fox and coaxed it to be quiet. Zhao Yuru saw that the hawker was so frightened that he was hiding away, and said regretfully, "I'm sorry, little brother, this little fox may be a stranger. Don't be afraid." The vendor laughed dryly and replied, it's okay, I was just startled suddenly. Is this a little fox? It looks like a puppy." I don't know if he felt insulted, but Sanjo started baring his teeth at the vendor again. Zhao Yuru did not dare to delay and quickly bought 2 brands. The vendor was very happy and said, "Sister-in-law, I'm not lying. These 2 peace charms were really enshrined in the temple, and they are effective. Go back and wear them for the students, and keep the names on the gold list. You will definitely win every exam." Okay, thank you for your kind words." Zhao Yuru nodded with a smile, then collected the sign and left with everyone. Everyone didn't take the incident to heart and continued talking and shopping. Ji-yin hugged the little fox and scolded it in a low voice, "Why didn't you behave well when I took you to play on the street for the first time? Then when we go out, we will have to keep you at home." Sanjo felt a little aggrieved, his little ears were drooping, and his small black bean-like eyes were blinking, looking extremely pitiful. She was a little reluctant to say a few words about the good news. Occasionally she turned around to look, and saw the vendor closing his stall in the distance. Her heart skipped a beat. This shopping street's main customers are students. During the day, shops and vendors were all busy doing business. They only waited until mid-afternoon, when the academy was over, to officially open for business. But why did the vendor suddenly close his stall without waiting for the afternoon to sell? Unexpectedly, Sanjo was lying in her arms. He turned to look at her and bared 2 more rows of white teeth. Ji-yin frowned, then motioned Shui Ling to come forward and whispered a few instructions. Shui Ling was a little confused, but she still nodded in agreement. Then with a bit of excitement, she quietly turned a corner and walked around until there was no trace. The joy of women's shopping is not in buying, but in shopping. The Li family, young and old, walked around for more than half an hour. Finally, they only picked up a box of sticky cakes and a few pieces of gabu and headed home. The sticky cake is of course to satisfy the craving for good news. Gabu is breathable, and Mrs. Li plans to sew some sets of vests and shorts for her grandchildren to wear when sleeping at night to keep them cooler. Although scholars must be decent, if they wear a long-sleeved shirt and trousers at night, they will suffer a sin. She just wants her grandchildren to be comfortable, whether they are decent or not is not important. As the sun set in the west, Ji Yi and Lu Yang actually came over. The 2 boys have been following the fleet north and south for the past 6 months. They have tanned a lot and have grown tall and strong. They are really 2 small iron towers worthy of the name. The 2 of them obviously came back directly from the dock. They brought 2 baskets and put a lot of ice cubes in them. They dragged them everywhere, and they were soaked in water. There were several large yellow croakers, more than 20 swimming crabs, and many large scallops and large prawns frozen in the basket. Ji Yi sat next to Grandma, smiling with big white teeth and showing off happily, "Nai, these are all brought back by us from the south, and they are not included in my uncle's goods. We bought them separately to honor you." Of course Mrs. Li was happy that her grandson was filial, but she still asked Lu Yang first, "Have you given them to your family as well?" "Give it away," Lu Yang responded with a smile, "My father is very happy, and he also said that he would call the village chief and the others to drink tonight." Mrs. Lee felt relieved and asked Yeshan to help bring 5 baskets, each containing a large yellow croaker, 2 crabs, a handful of prawns, and 7 or 8 scallops. This is for Mr. Zhou Shan Chang, the Peng family, Mr. Tang, and the 2 Quanfa women who helped make the bed when the family got married. Human feelings need to be moved around frequently and come and go frequently, so that they will become more and more familiar to you. There are so many children in the family studying in the academy, and they often receive care from others. At this time, giving something to express your feelings and let others know that the Li family has their best interests at heart. Yeshan accompanied Jia Yi and Lu Yang to the place where Mr. Zhou Shan Chang, Peng Jia, and Mr. Tang were. They were juniors and were used to being wild outside. Meeting these learned gentlemen was a slap in the face for both of them, lest they become young and arrogant. Proud. Moreover, Ji Yi is the second son of an earl, and his status is enough to represent the family, so he will not be looked down upon by other families. The 2 ladies of Quanfa were accompanied by Wen Wan by He Yan, thanking them for helping Zhang Luo's affairs at first, and also consolidating the connections for Wen Wan. After all, Wen Juan lives in Luoan, so it would be nice to have a place to move around on weekdays. The most important thing is that Mr. Peng has married a new wife and Wen Juan has a stepmother. If there is a small conflict between the 2 in the future, someone will help Wen Juan spread the word so that everyone in the academy will not listen to the new lady. One-sided words. I have to say that Mrs. Lee has good intentions and tries her best to make arrangements as thoughtfully as possible. Wen Juan is smart and understands her grandmother's protection and teachings, so she respects and appreciates her even more. However, Ji Yi was impatient to deal with those old scholars, so Mrs. Lee slapped her and said angrily, "You have been away from home all year round. If you don't go out and show your face, no one will know that Uncle Lee still has a little son like you." Ji Yi then took Lu Yang and went out. Wen Juan and the others also left afterwards. As soon as the house was quiet, Mrs. Lee took Shui Yun and Dong Mei to pick up the seafood, preparing to cook more in the evening and make it fun while the children were all gathered. Ji Yun was thinking about Shui Ling, so she took Santiago to play at the entrance of the courtyard and took a look at it. Shui Ling probably knew that his master was impatient, so he came back soon. The little girl was sweating from running and her face was red. She rushed directly to the well and drank a ladle of cold water. At the end, she approached her master and whispered, "Miss, you asked me to follow that little vendor." He closed his stall and ran to a forest to the east of the town. It didn't look like anyone lived in that forest, so I waited a little longer, and sure enough, within a quarter of an hour after entering, the hawker came out with a smile on his face. I wanted to follow him, but then another person came out of the woods. He was a little book boy of 12 or 13 years old. He looked at him with a sinister look on his face, so I followed the little book boy to the entrance of the academy. I watched him go in, and then went back to look for the vendor. Originally, I thought I couldn't find it, but after all, it took a while. Unexpectedly, the merchant actually showed up at the street corner with his luggage, even hired a carriage and hurried out of the town. Ji Yan frowned and asked Shui Ling to look at Sanjo, and then she ran to San Auntie's house. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 506. Chapter 506 is indeed weird. Zhao Yuru and Tao Hongying both went to the canteen to help. There was no one in her room, but the 2 peace charms were placed on the table, obviously planning to give them to Jiaran and Brother Li directly at night. Ji Yan climbed up on the chair, grabbed the sign, sat on the table, and looked at it carefully, but couldn't see anything wrong. But she just felt that there was something wrong with this brand, or that there was something wrong with the small vendor. It seems that he set up the stall just to sell the brand to the Lee family, and he has been emphasizing that candidates should wear it. The stall will be closed immediately after the sales are completed, or even moved. This is a typical example of a thief who has a guilty conscience and disappears without a trace. Mrs. Lee was outside and called out when her granddaughter disappeared. Jian could only stuff the sign into his arms and run out. Most of an hour later, school ended. Ji, Lu Yang and Jiaran came back chatting and laughing together, and the small courtyard immediately became lively. The first thing Jia Huan and Jia 11 did was to lie down by the well and look around. Sure enough, they found the barrel hanging in the well water, so they cheered and pulled the rope. Unfortunately, the barrel was too heavy, so Ji stepped forward and pulled it up in a few strokes. Needless to say, he immediately gained countless admiration from his brothers. 2 jasper melons and a dozen golden fruits were soaked in the wooden barrel. Brother Cat immediately ran to close the courtyard gate, just when Wenjuan and Aunt He also came back. So, the whole family sneakily shared a jade melon. It was sweet, quenched thirst, and cooled down the heat. Everyone, old and young, was extremely satisfied. Seeing that the boys were still enjoying the meal, Mrs. Lee gave them a dozen golden fruits, leaving only the last jade melon. She waited for her son and daughter-in-law to come back in the evening and eat together. Jian took advantage of the excitement and sat next to Brother Lee. Brother Lee carefully picked out the jasper melon seeds before putting them in his sister's hand. Jian smiled, took a big bite, and asked, "Brother, are there any annoying classmates in your school?" Yes, Brother Lee thought that his sister was just curious, so he said casually, "There is a classmate in our school who really likes to take advantage of others. He never studies ink. As long as he writes, he will take the pen to our inkstone. Go dip. Last time, he dropped his pen and stained my gown. No one in our school wanted to sit next to him. There is such a person. What about the exam? He also uses other people's food." Jian giggled, shook his little head, and took a big mouthful of melon. When Brother Lee saw that his sister had eaten half of it, he exchanged the piece that he had not eaten and let his sister continue to eat the melon hard. He ate the remaining half of the piece in 3 or 2 bites. At the end, he wiped his mouth and replied, "Of course he grinded the ink himself during the exam, but it is said that his ink block has been used for 2 years, and half of it is left. I am afraid it can be used for at least 2 more years." "Ha ha ha, this is so stingy," Jian burst out laughing. She didn't expect there to be such a student in the academy. This is much more cruel than those classmates who used shampoo and shower gel in the university dormitory in the previous life. Brother Lee also laughed hard. "Earlier, I was thinking about what Dad said about being friendly to my classmates. Later, I stopped paying attention to this person. I was friendly to him, but he took me for granted. What about Big Brother and his school? Are there people who don't fit in with others and are disliked by everyone?" Jian asked again. "Yes, eldest brother and the 2 people sitting in the back row of the school building glare at me every time they see me looking for eldest brother. The senior students who get along well with my eldest brother told me that those 2 people are just donkey dung eggs. I don't know what it means. Maybe they are shiny on the outside but they are straw bags on the inside." Brother Lee was probably worried that his sister would learn bad things, so he quickly changed the topic. "Grandma said, are you tired from studying the rules and needlework at home recently?" He looked at his sister's white and tender fingers and saw that there were no needle holes. He was relieved and said, "When my brother grows up and becomes an official to earn money, I will find an embroiderer for you to make clothes. Now you can simply learn and become an embroiderer, just look like it, you know." Jian took a big bite of the watermelon. It was really sweeter than honey. She quickly nodded her head and said, "Well, I listened to my brother." Brother Lee also smiled. The young boy was a little shy, but he looked more and more handsome. When the sky was dark, Mrs. Lee took her grandchildren to have a seafood feast to feed these big eaters. Just after sending them back to the college, Li Lao-san, Zhao Yuru, and Tao Hongying came back. The three of them sat under the eaves of the corridor, and Mrs. Li opened the green moon melon, and took a piece of it together with Aunt He, Shuiling, Shuiyun, Xiaoyu, Yashan and Dongmei. Old Mrs. Li asked Wenjuan how about going to those two Mrs. Quanfu's houses. Wenjuan smiled and said it carefully. When the bed was made, the Li family gave generous gifts. Now that Wenjuan has given such rare seafood, the two ladies are naturally happy. They all left Wenjuan to eat snacks and talk. If it hadn't been for the get out of class at the college, they might not have let her go. Hearing how lively they were, Ji Yin moved a small bench and sat next to San Bo. Li Lao-san turned sideways slightly, not wanting the smell of sweat on his body to infect his little niece, and then asked with a smile, "Fu Niuer, what did you do at home today?" "Let's play with this." Ji Yin took out the two signs, handed them to third uncle, and said, "Third uncle, there seems to be something wrong with this sign, but I can't find it." "Third uncle, can you help me find it?" "Okay, Uncle San, take a look." Li Lao-san didn't care. He took the sign and played with it for a long time. He was also a little surprised and asked, "Where did you get the sign? The workmanship is really exquisite. It should be two pieces of wood spliced together, but I can't find the connector." Ji Yin's eyes lit up and he said, "Uncle San must find it. If it doesn't work, just hammer it open. I want to see what it looks like inside." Li Lao-san rubbed his niece's hair and immediately went to get the tools. "My little niece is not trying to catch the stars and the moon, it's just a sign. You can open it and take a look if you want." But when he took the tools, the battle became louder, causing Mrs. Li and others to look over. Tao Hongying said, "Fu Niuer, why are you so naughty? Your third uncle bought the peace amulet before giving it to your brothers. Why are you causing trouble?" Just as Ji Yin was about to speak, Li Lao-san stabbed the sign somewhere with the tip of his knife, and the sign suddenly exploded. Li Lao-san was also startled, and when the sign came out of his hands, two pieces of wood and a thin piece of paper fell down. Ji Yin quickly picked up the note with quick eyes and hands, and when he opened it, his expression changed. An article was carefully written on the note in small regular script. "This is a peace charm for good luck in exams. It is carved from wood and is allowed to be brought in during exams." If she hadn't discovered the mystery behind it today, her two brothers wouldn't have known about it either. They would have been exposed in the examination room and discovered this article. Before Li Lao-san could react, he took two pieces of wood and put them back together again, exclaiming, "The person who carved this wooden sign is so skillful. I was also lucky. I pressed it tentatively, otherwise it would be impossible to open it." End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 507. Chapter 507, How Vicious the Intention Is. On the other hand, when Mrs. Li saw her granddaughter holding a palm-sized piece of paper, her expression turned bad. She vaguely guessed and asked, "Fu Niuer, is something wrong?" Ji Yin stood up and said, "Grandma, come into the house. It's hard to talk here." Old Mrs. Li immediately stepped forward and took her granddaughter's hand and entered the main room. Li Lao-san, Zhao Yuru, Tao Hongying, and Wenjuan also followed in. Mammy He, Shui Ling and Shui Yun were waiting in the house, while Yeshan and Dongmei were guarding the door. Xiaoyu finished washing the dishes, came out of the kitchen, and wanted to go into the house, but Dongmei made an excuse and sent her away. Ji Yin took another wooden sign and handed it to the third uncle. Li Lao-san opened it in a few clicks, and sure enough, another small piece of paper fell out. At this time, everyone felt something was wrong. Ji Yin took two small pieces of paper and said, "Grandma, if the two brothers bring this sign into the examination room and the examiner discovers that there is a note or an article hidden in the sign, the brothers will be considered cheating and kicked out of the examination room. Everyone's expressions became even worse. Zhao Yuru still had a glimmer of hope and asked, Fu Niuer, have you seen it clearly? Could it be a talisman? Mrs. Li waved her hand, took a deep breath and said, back then, when your eldest brother took the exam, I asked about the rules. As long as students find anything with words on them, they are cheating and will be kicked out of the examination room. From now on, he will no longer be able to take exams, enter higher schools, or become an official. Li Laosan got angry at that time and stood up suddenly. Mom, is someone trying to frame Jiaran and brother Li? Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru were also panicked. Tao Yuru said, what should we do? Do you want to invite the eldest brother and the second brother over? Zhao Yuru slapped herself directly, feeling extremely regretful and said, it's all my fault for being cheap. Why did I buy these things for my children? Jiyan felt sorry for San Auntie and quickly made her and my mother sit down. She whispered, Auntie, don't be like this. Bad people will definitely think of many ways to harm my brother. Without this peace charm, there will be other things. Seeing that her granddaughter didn't look panicked, Mrs. Li felt a little confident, so she hugged her to her side and asked, Fu Niuer, you discovered this, so tell me what our family should do. Jiyan waved at the door, and the little fox biting her tail and playing ran over and jumped on her lap. Jiyan said, Grandma, it was Sanjo who wanted to bite the hawker, but Sanjo is usually very good and never bites. I thought there was something wrong with the hawker that made Sanjo want to bite him, so I looked back many times. Take a few glances. As a result, the hawker closed his stall after selling our brand, so I asked Shui Ling to follow him to have a look. After Shui Ling came back, he said that the hawker was whispering to a little book boy outside the town, and then the hawker returned home and packed up his luggage and moved away. Moved? Mrs. Li was surprised. Jiyan nodded, yes, I took my luggage and hired a carriage to move it. He must have done something bad and escaped. Li Laosan stood up anxiously and was about to chase him out. Mrs. Li stopped her son, it's too late to chase him now. After saying that, she called Shui Ling in and asked, Shui Ling, if you see that little book boy again, can you still recognize him? Yes, Shui Ling patted her chest and assured, Old madam, let me take a walk around the academy. I will definitely be able to identify the book boy. He has a black mole on his ear, but it is so big that I can see it clearly. That's good. Mrs. Li nodded and reached out to take out the cigarette pot and take a few puffs to calm down the shock and think about it. Who knew that her hand was empty and she found that her cigarette pot was thrown at home. In the past 6 months, life at home has been getting better and better, and she has nothing to worry about, so she has put down the pipe and pot. Unexpectedly, I wanted to take 2 puffs today, but I couldn't take one for a while, and I felt a little irritable. Outsiders think she can do anything, and the children and grandchildren at home also rely on her and ask her for advice on everything. But only she knows that many times, her heart is hanging, for fear that she will do something wrong and bring trouble to her children and grandchildren. Being a family member is so stressful, and you feel like walking on thin ice every day. Just like this time, if I just buy a peace charm for my grandsons, I almost end up harming my grandsons. How vicious is the person who framed you behind the scenes? This is going to cut off the path for the 3rd generation of the Li family. Jiyan saw her grandma's anxiety, hugged her arm, and comforted the old lady, Grandma, my brothers are so lucky. I have a smart sister. If I hadn't discovered that there was something wrong with the wooden sign, my brothers would have been in trouble. After saying that, she raised her head proudly and said proudly, when my brothers pass the scholar examination, I will ask them to buy me 2 kilograms of sticky cakes as a thank you gift. This was said without politeness, making everyone laugh. Old Mrs. Li even held her granddaughter in her arms and kissed her on the forehead. Oh, my lucky girl, You are the treasure of our old Li family. Your brothers really had a high fever in their last life. Xiang, I've only wanted to have a sister like you in this life. Li Lao-san and others were also frightened and nodded one after another. Zhao Yuru even said, Fu Niuer also saved the third uncle, otherwise the third uncle would really not be able to live. After the third uncle is busy these days, I will make you a new dress. Tao Hongying was also proud that her daughter was so smart and blessed, but she was afraid that the little girl would have her tail turned upside down, so she quickly changed her words and said, Mom, do you want Shui Ling to go to the college to find someone tomorrow? Mrs. Li nodded, patted her little granddaughter gently, and said, Shui Ling must go, but be careful not to be discovered. This time Fu Niuer was smart and discovered that this brand is weird. Find the culprit and tell Grn and the others to be careful. I'm afraid there will be a second or third time. Everyone nodded, and Mrs. Li added, tomorrow morning, Yuru will give this brand to Grn and brother Li and let them wear it. There are still 4 or 5 days left for the exam, and no one will expose it at this time. Let them fool the person behind it first. As long as this person thinks our family didn't notice, it will be easier for our family to handle this matter. Okay, let's listen to Mother Li Lao-san hurriedly responded. He also felt sorry for me. When this matter is settled, I will invite my eldest brother and the others to come over to discuss it. Mother, just rest and don't worry about this matter. We are all getting married and starting a business. He's not a child anymore. Grn also has ideas, don't worry. Mrs. Li was pleased to hear this and nodded in agreement. In fact, how could she not care about him, but she was also happy that her son was filial. Because of this incident, everyone had a restless sleep that night. Jiyan was very happy because she had crushed a small conspiracy against her brother. She hugged the little fox and slept profusely in sweat. It's really a little fox's fur. It's midsummer now, and it's too hot around her. Early on the next morning, Jiyan had just woken up and was sitting under the eaves of the veranda eating breakfast when Li Lao-san and Shui Ling came back. Shui Ling looked excited, but Li Lao-san looked half angry and half confused. Old Mrs. Li put down her needle and thread and called them to come forward to talk. Shui Ling said directly, Old Madam, Miss, I found the book boy. He came to the cafeteria to get food in the morning. I saw him and followed him to the school building. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 508. Chapter 508. Are people's hearts rotten? Li Lao-san had obviously endured it all the way, and now he complained angrily, Mom, what's wrong with the world, are people's hearts rotten? Whenever Grn's classmates in the school go to the cafeteria to eat, we have to take extra care of him. We just hope that Grn is in the class and his classmates can get along well with him. Now, it's just that these people are not grateful. Why? What about Grn? Mrs. Li was confused after hearing this, and quickly sat her son down. She shook the big cattail leaf fan to fan her son to disperse his anger, and asked, Tell me slowly, what does this nonsense look like? Did you find out which one it is the scholar's master in the same school as Grn? Yes, Li Lao-san was a little discouraged, even the 2 students from Grn Academy. I don't know how to tell Grn, this child usually gets along well with his classmates, but suddenly something like this happened. The child still doesn't know how to be sad. Jiyan asked brother Li a few questions yesterday, and his private guess was similar to this result. Since the family had no grudges with the people in the academy, the gentleman even felt a little closer to the Li family and expected the Li family to send famous flowers to the academy. The students eat 3 meals a day in the cafeteria. The food is delicious and not expensive, and there are also fresh products such as fruit drinks. Of course, no one wants to be an enemy of the Li family, no matter how displeased the Li family is. So, there are only 2 possibilities for this matter. One is from Jiaran's side. Maybe he offended his classmates without knowing it, and was hated by others. The other one is an enemy of the Li family, who has put his hand into the academy and bribed the students to get into trouble. But no matter which one it is, they are full of malice. Old Mrs. Li also sighed, "It's better to ask your eldest brother and second brother to come over and discuss what to do. Jiaran must have something to say, so let's do it after school in the academy." "Okay, mother, I'll make the arrangements." Li Lao-san got up and prepared to go to the city to report the news. At this time, Yeshan came out and said, "Third master, leave this matter to me. You have to be busy with the work in the canteen, and I just have nothing to do. In addition, I also want to ask the names of the students who are behind the scenes, and check their details along the way. Maybe I can know why they framed the young master." Li Lao-san and Mrs. Li were of course happy and immediately agreed. Yeshan and his wife are the people left by the marquis for good news. They usually look quiet and unobtrusive. But even the chief steward of the home mansion was very polite in front of the couple and did not dare to show any slightness. When the marquis first met the Li family, he was seriously ill and had only the couple to take care of him. This is the confidant among the confidants. On the surface, the housekeeper is in charge of the home mansion, but secretly, Yashin and his wife are responsible for many of the manpower and errands. This time, the Li family would have to go through a lot of trouble to find out the details of the students, but here in Yashin, it is as easy as eating and drinking. Soon, Yeshan set off for the city, and Li Lao-san also returned to the canteen. Old Mrs. Li breathed a sigh of relief and felt a little confused, but she still had the patience to continue sewing for her grandchildren. Once she comes and gets busy, she won't think about anything. Secondly, let's take off the shorts and vests before tonight so that the grandchildren can sleep more comfortably. Jiyan couldn't wait for a while, so he led Santiago to play in the yard for a while, and then went to the empty room to help sister-in-law Wenjuan make ice. I remember when I was a child, the vendors who traveled from village to village, riding bicycles and carrying foam on their backs, sold popsicles and ice bricks in the alley. She suddenly felt a little greedy, so she rolled up her sleeves and joined in the fun, hoping to freeze some popsicles. As a result, Wenjuan was afraid of hurting her precious sister-in-law, so she hugged her, coaxed her and sent her directly back to her grandmother. Jiyan was helpless. The little passion for innovation that had just burst out was extinguished. Hey, she'd better go home and mess around. In her adoptive father's yard, even if a big hole is blown in the house, no one will care. At noon, everyone had a quick bite of water and braised green pepper and shredded pork. After a few bites, Niu Hung and Lin Er came and helped Xiaoyu put the ice bucket on the wheelbarrow, and then pushed it to the academy. Wenjuan breathed a sigh of relief, tidied up a little, and then helped her grandma do needlework. Mrs. Li liked her hard work, but was afraid that she would be exhausted, so she kicked her out to play with Jiyan. Jiyan found an old sheepskin ball that her brothers had discarded, and started kicking it with her sister-in-law and the little fox. So in the small yard, a young daughter-in-law, a fat girl, and a little fox were chasing a ball, shouting and screaming, and their laughter shook the sky. Grandma He accompanied Mrs. Li Shui Ling and Shui Yun were eager to try and soon joined in. These two girls were practicing martial arts and had flexible legs and feet. One was helping Wenjuan and the other was helping Jiyan, but the little fox was so anxious that he screamed angrily and hugged the sheepskin ball without letting go of his paws, looking like he was cheating to the end. At this time, Mrs. Li and Aunt He also laughed. When Mr. Li, and Mr. Wen arrived in a hurry, they thought they had gone to the wrong place when they heard how busy the courtyard was. Hearing the knock on the door, Shui Ling ran to open the door and quickly welcomed them in. Wenjuan wiped the sweat from her forehead, feeling very embarrassed. She hurriedly saluted and quickly left to change clothes. Jiyan came up to her with a smile, and was led by two uncles, who carried her directly to the eaves of the corridor. What are you doing? It's so hot, you have to bathe with sweat. Li Zhensheng pulled his sleeves to wipe the sweat beads from his little niece. He felt happy again when he saw that her face was as red as an apple. This child has been able to eat and sleep since he was a child. He is chubby and happy no matter how you look at him. They were really anxious on the way just now. After all, they had taken every precaution, but they almost let someone take advantage of it and harmed the children's future. For so long, he and his second brother never talked about it, but in fact they had a knot in their hearts. The second brother wanted to study but had no chance, so he placed all his hopes on Jiren. However, his successful career in Qingyun was cut off in the hands of the Wang family, and brother Li became the continuation of his dream. If something happens to these two children and they cannot continue to study and take exams, it will be worse for him and his second brother than death. Fortunately, once again, thanks to my little niece, I discovered the strangeness early and exposed the matter. The more he thought about it, the more he felt filled with joy and gratitude. Fu Niuer, uncle, thank you. Without your protection, your brothers may not be able to escape this plot. Jiyan stood, held in the arms of the squatting uncle, and you could just see the worry and gratitude in his eyes. She stretched out her little hand and patted her uncle's shoulder gently, coaxing him like a little adult. Uncle, don't worry, the bad guys are stupid and can't hurt my brother. Li Lauer also squatted down, rubbed his little niece's hair, and said with a smile, whatever Fu Niuer wants, tell your second uncle, even the stars and the moon, and your second uncle will pick it back for you. Fu Niuer wants her brothers to take the top prize and become high-ranking officials. Brother Li said that after he becomes an official, he will find an embroiderer to make clothes for Fu Niuer, so Fu Niuer won't have to learn needlework. Jiyan smiled with big eyes. It was bent into a crescent moon, and what he said made everyone laugh. Li Zhensheng nodded quickly, okay, uncle, remember it for you. If your brother forgets in the future, uncle will chase him with a cane and beat him to make him fulfill his promise. Li Lauer also smiled and said, second uncle, I will help you remember it too. Wen Wan changed her clothes and came out, and quickly brought Shui Yun and Shui Ling to serve tea and snacks. Perhaps because she was afraid that the elders would be too hot, she made a few cups of honey and passion fruit drink. The sweet and cool juice made Li Zhensheng and others full of praise. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 509. Chapter 509. Is it a coincidence or was it premeditated? Li Zhensheng said, this thing can be sold in a restaurant. The customers will definitely like it. Wen Juan immediately said, I wrote a recipe for my uncle in a while. It was Fu Niuer who taught me how to make it. It's very simple to make. The ones sold here in the academy are good, and they can sell for 30 or 40 taels of silver a month. Li Zhensheng nodded, and Mrs. Li asked Mr. Wen, isn't the yamen busy? Is it delaying your errand again? No, auntie, I had nothing to do in the afternoon, so I happened to hear about this, so I came over with you, Mr. Wen said with a smile. Everyone chatted for a while, and Yeshan accompanied Li Laosan back from the academy. Li Laosan was covered in sweat. As soon as he entered the room, he apologized to his brother, eldest brother, second brother, it was me who failed to take good care of the boys, and they almost suffered a plot. Li Zhensheng waved his hand, took his younger brother and sat down together, and comforted, people want to plot against us, but we can't prevent it no matter how we do it. It's not your fault. We usually act as hands-off shopkeepers and leave our children here, but you and your siblings have taken a lot of trouble. If you want to apologize, it's us who should apologize. Li Lauer also said, yes, and Jiren and the others are already old. It would be better to experience a little danger, so as not to develop into a dandy who doesn't know the world. Li Lao-san felt better now. Mr. Wen finished the fruit drink in his hand and said, "Who can tell me in detail what's going on? Let's discuss how to deal with it." Li Lao-san is a clumsy talker, but he knows best, so he speaks slowly. Finally, he also found the small piece of paper found in the wooden sign. Mr. Wen looked at it, frowned and said, "The people behind it have really worked hard. Guessing questions are popular in the city recently, and these two are among them. And the person who wrote the question has pretty good literary talent. If he is caught in the examination room, he will definitely be counted as cheating, and there will be absolutely no room for relaxation." Li Zhensheng and Li Laoer both had bad expressions. Li Laoer said, "If students are jealous of Jiren and brother Li because of trivial matters such as academic studies, they shouldn't spend so much effort, and they won't be able to make such detailed arrangements, right?" Mr. Wen nodded, "There must be support behind it." Jiyan looked at Yeshan and asked, "Uncle Das Han, have you gone into the city to find out about the bad guys?" Yeshan stepped forward, cupped his hands, and replied, "I only had time to find out some simple information. Of these two students, one is a distant relative of the Wang family, and the other seems to have a sister who married into the Yan family." "The Wang family? Yan family?" Everyone looked at each other with complicated expressions when they realized what was happening. Needless to say, the Wang family is the legacy of Li Zhensheng's marriage. Even now, the boss of the Wang family is still thinking of stumbling upon Mr. Li. On the surface, you dare not take action, but behind your back, you are like a poisonous snake, you need to be careful at all times. The most surprising thing is the Yan family. The Yan family has moved away and returned to their hometown. If they don't mention it deliberately, everyone will forget about this family. After all, the former young master Yan is now Li Yong, who has married a wife, had children, and settled down in the new village. Even Mrs. Jo, my biological sister, seldom moves around. It was a coincidence that these two families joined forces to plot against the Li family, or was it premeditated? It was Mrs. Li who spoke first. In any case, the previous grievances with the Wang family and the Yan family were all caused by their faults, and our Li family has a clear conscience. Now they are actively plotting, and we can't let them go easily. Otherwise, if others follow their example, our family will have no peace." Everyone nodded, and Li Zhensheng said, "First of all, we must get rid of these two students. They cannot be allowed to be next to the Jiren brothers. We can talk about the rest slowly." Li Laoer thought for a while and suggested, "Why don't we treat the other person the same way he does? Since they have tampered with the peace talisman, it's better to find an opportunity to change the sign. In the examination room, if they falsely accuse Jiren and brother Li, then let the two children ask for equal treatment and examine them both. When the time comes, they will be the unlucky ones." Li Zhensheng agreed, "This is like shooting oneself in the foot, but Mr. Wen had a different opinion. Let's think about it again and wait until Jiren comes back from school to see what he thinks." Of course Li Zhensheng and Li Laoer will not object. Mr. Wen is Jiren's teacher. Mr. Wen is speaking now with the intention of teaching his disciples through this matter. It is not too late for them to be grateful. Soon after everyone chatted for a while, school ended. Jian, Jiaxi, and Cat Brother were thinking about the good things at home and ran quickly. When they pushed the courtyard door, they were shocked to see their elders all there. The three naughty boys subconsciously began to reflect on whether they had gotten into trouble recently. Jiren and brother Li followed behind, discussing their homework as they walked. As a result, Jiren saw his brothers blocking the door and asked, "Why don't you go in?" The three boys smiled and hurriedly hid behind the eldest brother. As soon as Jiren saw the lineup under the eaves, he didn't understand anything. He glared at his brothers and led them forward to salute. Li Zhensheng smiled and said, Go wash your hands and face, change into clean clothes and come back. I have something serious to say to you. The Grn brothers responded and went to the well to fetch water, washed away the sweat on their faces, and then ran back to the room to change clothes. Finally, he tidied up and looked like a student, and then he sat down to talk with the elders again. Wen Juan brought Shui Yun and Shui Ling another fruit drink. The boys drank half a cup in one go, and they immediately became energetic like the nectar of a drought-stricken seedling. Jian and Jiaxi secretly winked at their sister, wondering why the elders came here. Jian was smiling, hiding behind his uncle and making faces. And Jiaxi was so anxious that his head was on fire. Okay, stop making trouble. Mrs. Li noticed the children's little moves, so she patted her granddaughter and asked Jian to sit next to her. Then, she said, before, when you were young, I didn't tell you anything happened at home. I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to help and would have to worry about it, so the family always protected you. Now that you are considered adults, I can tell you about things at home. What's more, something happened yesterday, and someone has set their sights on you and started plotting against you, so it's even more important for me to tell you. The brothers were a little confused when they heard it. Jian was the first to react and his expression changed. Brother Li also stared. Jian and Jiaxi then jumped up. Grandma, what are you talking about? Who wants to plot against us? Only Brother Cat is the youngest and still doesn't understand. Mrs. Li waved her hand and motioned for her grandchildren to sit down. Then she carefully recounted what happened yesterday. Finally, she patted her fat granddaughter beside her and sighed, "It's thanks to your sister's carefulness and timely investigation that we discovered this incident thing. Otherwise, you might not know until it happens, but by then it will be too late." The faces of Jian and Brother Li could no longer be described as ugly, and both brothers' eyes were red. They wake up at midnight every day and study hard in order to get good grades and be worthy of the education and support of their families and their hard work. Unexpectedly, someone would frame them for cheating in the examination room and cut off their Qingyun road. Once they are found guilty of cheating, they will be a disgrace to scholars in the future. Not only will they no longer be able to take exams, but their families will also be implicated. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 510. Chapter 510. The Li family has a promising future. The two of them subconsciously pulled off the wooden sign from their waists. Brother Li was so angry that he even wanted to throw it down, but Li Laosan picked it up. This sign is still useful, so keep it for now. While talking, Li Laosan put the two signs together, played with them, and the signs opened. He put the two small pieces of paper in again and fastened them tightly. They were so tight that they couldn't be seen at all. Li Zhensheng, Li Laoer and Mr. Wen took turns looking at the wooden sign, and they were all amazed. Li Laoer said, "It's such a delicate idea that ordinary carpenters can't do it." Mr. Wen turned to Jian and asked, "My family has already taken a chance to see it, and the two classmates who framed you also wore such a sign. What your father means is to find someone to change the wooden signs. In this way, if they really make a fuss in the examination room, you will ask to see their signs as well. By then, they will be the ones cheating, and all the bad consequences will follow on their heads." Brother Li's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he nodded and said, "Okay, let them also have a taste of being falsely accused." Jian and Jiaxi were also excited after hearing this. Jiaxi even shouted, "Yes, yes, that's how it should be. Let the examiner kick them out and never take another exam again." Dan Jiaran pondered for a moment, then shook his head, "Teacher, I don't want to do this." Mr. Wen smiled and asked, "Why don't you want to do this? Tell me." Because of the academy, Jiaran took a deep breath, suppressed the anger in his heart and tried to calm down, and said, These two people act so viciously, no matter how we fight back, it will not be wrong. However, they represent not only themselves, but also a student of Luoan Academy. If we let them cause trouble in the exam, whether they cheat or we cheat, it will ruin the reputation of Luoan Academy. They can ignore the academy, but we can't. We brothers have been in the academy for so long. Our classmates are friendly and our husband is erudite. We are taught by the academy. We are very grateful. We can't repay the academy and add glory to the academy. If it is just to vent a bad temper and have a personal grudge, it will also destroy the academy. Reputation will surely make your conscience uneasy in the future. His words fell to the ground, and no one responded for a long time. Xiaofeng wandered over from next door and wanted to playfully lift up everyone's clothes, but was startled by the atmosphere and quickly ran away against the wall. Okay, well said. Mr. Wen was so excited that he stood up first and congratulated the Li family. Auntie, the Li family will definitely be the best in the future. This child Jiren is enough to take on the important task of shining the lintel. Almost everyone can read and understand, but it is so rare to have this kind of ambition and courage. This is what the eldest grandson of a big family should look like. The Li family has a promising future. Mrs. Li also nodded repeatedly. She actually only thought of retaliating with retaliation, but her grandson gave her such a big surprise. Tit for tooth is just the way it is at the moment, but it is rare for a grandson to have such a big picture perspective, which is what their small family lacks. This book is really worth reading. The three brothers Li Zhensheng were also very happy. They stepped forward and pulled Jiren's arm. One patted the shoulder and the other patted the back. I don't know why they were so rare. Especially Li Laoer, I am so ashamed and proud. As a father, he is not as considerate as a child, but such an outstanding child is his son. Jiren was originally worried that his family would be angry. After all, the family's creed was not to cause trouble and not to be afraid of trouble. If someone bullied him, he would confront him head-on. Although he took the overall situation into consideration, he seemed a bit cowardly and gave in. I didn't expect that my family would be so supportive. Good boy, sit down quickly. Li Zhensheng pulled his nephew to sit down, then patted his son Li Geer on the head, comforting him. Don't worry, it's okay for you to want revenge just now, but sometimes we fight. It's not just a matter of a fist and a kick, but more of an overall consideration. Especially because our family is no longer a farmer in Qingshui village, you will gradually come into contact with more and more people in the future, depending on your status also higher. If there is a dispute, it cannot be solved by fighting and killing. Fortunately you are still young, and your eldest brother is growing up very fast. You will still have the opportunity to learn slowly in the future. Brother Li nodded obediently and sat next to his father. Jian and Jiaxi blushed even more. They are older than Brother Li. Their studies are not as good as theirs, and they are not as considerate as his brother in times of trouble. Aren't they too useless? Brother Cat has been holding back a lot of words, but he can't get anything to say. Jian quickly took out a fruit and pulled him to sit down. Then, the two brothers and sisters ate each bite one by one. Occasionally, the greedy little fox would come and grab some. Sure enough, Brother Cat was distracted and was no longer in a hurry to talk. Mr. Wen continued to ask Jiren, although you have to worry about the reputation of the college, you can't suffer the consequences. You can't let these two people be around you. Do you have any good ideas? Jiren just got the affirmation and now he can speak more fluently. Those two are students of the academy, and the reputation of the academy was almost destroyed. I have given up the chance to fight back for the sake of the academy. Of course, the academy cannot see me being wronged. So, my opinion is to find all the witnesses and physical evidence, and then send them to Dean Zhou and the gentlemen, expose their conspiracy, and ask the academy to expel them as a warning to others. Mr. Wen nodded and affirmed again, yes, that's how it should be. Regardless of whether the enemy is strong or weak, it's best not to face it alone. Try to turn your enemy into the enemy of everyone. At that time, others will help you eliminate the enemy without you taking action, and there will be less trouble. No one will judge you and say you are right or wrong, because if you are wrong, everyone is wrong. Grn quickly stood up and bowed deeply. Thank you, teacher, for your teaching. Okay, I don't need to be so polite. Mr. Wen looked at the son, then at Li Zhensheng and others. Let's go visit Dean Zhou. Li Zhensheng and others got up. Li Laosan packed up the wooden signs, took Jiaran and brother Li, and went out together. Jiyan was worried that her family would suffer, so she told Yeshan and Dongmei, Uncle Dashan and Aunt Mei, please go and have a look. Don't let the bad guys escape. Okay, don't worry, Miss Yeshan responded and followed Dongmei to the academy. The three boys, and Jiaxi and Cat brother, were left behind, standing under the eaves of the corridor, somewhat at a loss. They usually attend classes and study in the academy, learn horse riding and archery, have good classmates, and have family members nearby to take care of them, so they don't have to worry about food, housing, and clothing. Their lives are so joyful that they are more comfortable than gods. But today I suddenly discovered that under the beautiful scenery, there were still some poisonous thorns and sharp knives hidden, as if they were looking for opportunities to stab them at any time. The world is full of beautiful things, but suddenly the filter is broken and the original ugly face is revealed. This feeling is really bad. Several boys subconsciously leaned closer to their grandma and sister, wanting to say something, but not knowing what to say. End of this chapter.